Greetings all, I'm Aaron Mills and welcome back to the Riverdale Vlogs, episode 5, Heart of Darkness. And yeah, just like I thought, they're moving things forward. A lot to unpack in this episode, so let's get the minor stuff out of the way first. Okay, so following everything that happened, Archie's apparently been going on a self-punishment kick, or at least trying to get serious about his music. He pretty much has been deciding that football is the way to go to get a scholarship so he can get into college and study music there. And he's been doing pretty good about it, to the point where the coach tells him that he's in the running for being captain of the team, with Reggie as his primary opponent. So Archie's trying to do this, but he's also trying to find something with music, which gets a chance with it when Val from Josie and the Pussycats points out that she knows a guy who's an adjunct professor at a nearby college who's teaching composition, and Archie goes to talk to him, and the guy's very intense. He's one of those guys, it's like, I've spent all day in the studio, and at night I was waitering and bartending, and, basically it's like, you must suffer for your art kind of guy there. And, he rags on Archie that, that he doesn't actually have any of his songs actually written down. So Val offers to help Archie with that and everything else, and she goes over to Archie's place and they're writing it down, and there seems to be a little attraction going in there, which is not without precedent. Anyway, so I want to just take a minute. Can I just say that Luke Perry is doing the awkward dad thing brilliantly in this, because he has the usual, oh god, my son's in his room alone with a girl scene, and it's actually pretty damn funny. Just because, he was the big heartthrob back in the 90210 days, and now, the tables have turned. So, let's see, what's next? So, Archie, Val helps him out, and he takes the sheet music, and, the guy gets on him for it's being sloppy and rushed and all that, and he listens to his songs and says they're juvenile, and they're all breakup songs, and basically just tells Archie, I don't think I can help you, which naturally sends Archie for a loop, and he's just like, oh great, now what do I do? And then Val points out, it's like, listen, Miss Grundy said you're good, so you thought you were good. Now he says you're bad, so you think you're bad. And she basically points out, what's stopping you from doing the music? Is it other people or is it you? And pretty much, after this, at the memorial service for Jason, and I'll get into that in more detail in just a minute, Archie gives Jason's mom Jason's jersey and pretty much retires it, by himself, and no authority, but, and that's where we get the scene where she's like, oh, you look just like him. But it isn't quite as creepy as it seems. She does that, but then she just, realizes what she's doing. She's like, I'm sorry. Excuse me. Thank you, Archibald. And she takes the thing, and that movement, I guess, gets back to the coach, and he offers Archie the captainship of the team, but Archie pretty much turns it down and says Reggie should have it. Because he's not going to be able to be the captain. He's going to have to give 100% of himself, and he can't do that because part of it's dedicated to music. So Reggie becomes the captain of the team, and we actually get we're actually starting to see a little more of Reggie in this, and in fact the Reggie from the comics. Now up until this point, Reggie has pretty much been, as many people have called him, Asian dude bro Reggie, and but there's always been a little more to that. Reggie's kind of a jerk and self-centered and arrogant and egotistical, sure. But when it comes down to it, when it comes down to important stuff, to where, there's a time, Reggie seems to know there's a time and a place. And we saw that in this episode, because Archie went and hurt his hand during practice. And, he was, trying to just push through it and all that, and even Reggie was like, you can't play with a hand like that, and he's like, I got it, Reg, don't worry about it, And even when Archie turns over the captainship to him, he's surprised, what? Wait a minute, what are you doing? Are you insane? So, we're getting a little bit of the full Reggie Mantle character, and I hope they start doing more with him in the series. Because they haven't done much with Reggie so far, and I would really like to see more of him. So, other minor things. We get more with Hermione Lodge. Pretty much we meant, she and Fred Andrews, Archie's dad, have kind of had this bizarre little thing where, they're attracted to each other, but they're both still married. Fred and his wife are separated, so she's in Chicago, according to the first episode, and, Hiram Lodge is in jail. And so they're kind of leery about that. I mentioned the trailer, she found a box and started screaming about it. Well, it turns out that box just gets left in the middle of the floor. It pops and she opens it up, and there's a damn rattlesnake in there. So she calls Fred and tells him what's going on. For the most part, she tells him that it's a warning from the Southside Serpents, and it's because Hiram owes them money, and she won't tell him any more than that because she doesn't want him involved. And again, later at the memorial for Jason, Fred and Hermione talk, and Fred offers her the bookkeeping job he originally turned her down for, probably just to get them together and all, just to, this protect her kind of thing, but whatever. So that should be interesting if that goes anywhere. So now let's get to the real meat of this particular episode, because those were the only two real subplots. This had a lot more going on. We get to see a little more of Cheryl's home life, and as you would expect, not that great. And actually, for once, this series is doing something to make me actually sympathize with Cheryl. I still don't like her, but there's a bunch of stuff going on. So, the Blossoms decide to have a memorial service for Jason, but they have ulterior motives. The idea, they've invited everybody in town who they suspect could have been responsible for Jason's death. And as Clifford Blossom, Jason and Cheryl's dad tells Sheriff Keller, there's a lot of people who don't like us, most of them from the founding families of Riverdale. So, before that, Veronica tries to stop this feud they've got going, just basically saying it all ends in mutually assured destruction. So what's the point? Let's be friends or frenemies or something. And Cheryl invites her to sleep over the night before the memorial service, saying she doesn't want to be alone. She invites her to a sleepover. Well, as it turns out, the only person she invited was Veronica, which leads to a very awkward dinner scene with Cheryl and Veronica and Cheryl's parents and Cheryl's grandmother, Nana Rose, I guess is who she is, the character, who someone mentioned to me in the right lighting looks an awful lot like Peter Capaldi. And I watched the episode again, and she does. Yeah, she does, but it's mostly the hair and the age. That's pretty much the only things. So during the awkward dinner scene, Penelope, Cheryl's mom, it's like this series has a problem with moms. Betty's mom's a bitch. Cheryl's mom's a mega bitch. And while Veronica's mom is loving and supportive, she's also into a lot of shady crap. So this series has a problem with moms. I don't know why, but they do. But it does. I mean, Archie's mom is in Chicago, and it's just like we don't know anything about Jughead's mom, but even Kevin. I mean, we don't see Kevin's mom at all. We've only seen him and his dad. So this series has a problem with moms. I don't know why. I don't know if that's going to be significant later, or if it's just something that happened, or what. But yeah. Anyway. So during the awkward dinner party, we actually discover that the whole thing with the sticky maple thing from a couple of episodes ago actually has some grounding, because apparently Riverdale's entire economy was based on the maple syrup industry, which is why it's Sweetwater River, which is, why this seems to be a thing all the way around and all that. There's more to it. We'll get to that in a minute. But that's just a really weird thing. That's just kind of weird, and yet so Riverdale. So, actually Cheryl and Veronica bond a little bit over some photos and whatnot, and Cheryl's parents won't let her speak at the memorial, supposedly because they're pissed about the fact that Cheryl was helping Jason to run away, because all that came out, and they're convinced that Cheryl's just going to try to make it all about her, and Cheryl calls them on their bullshit and just basically bringing everybody in town to the house so they can investigate them. Veronica encourages Cheryl to just go ahead and read anyway, to say something anyway, and, you know, the hell with what her parents say and let them do their worst. And Cheryl says something kind of interesting. She says, oh, they will. They'll kill me. Is she being metaphorical? Maybe, maybe not. Who knows with this series? So Cheryl speaks at the memorial service, and she's wearing the white dress we saw at the beginning of the series. Why they're wearing the white is still just kind of odd. There's no real explanation why in there. But we find out that Cheryl didn't have a particularly happy childhood, that they used to have that even though they were twins, they used to have separate birthday parties until one year Jason insisted that they share it, and it turned out he did that because nobody wanted to come to Cheryl's birthday party and he didn't want her to know. So after she speaks, you know, Penelope reads her the riot act, and basically, you know, she's like, Cheryl says, it's what Jason would have wanted. No, it's like everything, it's about what you want. And basically, you know, Penelope more or less removes everything that has meaning in Cheryl's life, tells her she's not going to be in charge, she's going to be taken off the River Vixens cheerleading team, and that if there wasn't for the fact that no place would have you, I would ship you off to a boarding school in Europe tonight. So it's like, wow, really? There's a lot of something I don't understand what the deal is with that, but that's just really, really weird. But not as weird as some of the other stuff that happens. So let's get to the... Oh yeah, and forgot to mention, Veronica witnessed the scene through the open doorway, but that wasn't followed up on. We haven't followed up with anything on what happened to Cheryl after that point. The other half of this particular plot line involves Betty and Jughead, and to a lesser extent Kevin. Kevin somehow remembers how his dad's murder wall was set up, and so they set it all back up in the school paper offices, and they try to figure this out and what's going on and what to do and who it is, and figure out who could have broken into it. But they figure the only somebody who wasn't at the drive-in that night could have broken in and stolen everything. So Trev Brown, Val's younger sister, who we saw, the same guy who ratted out Chuck and the scorebook for the girl scorebook in the episode, in the earlier episode, comes out. He asks to go out with Betty, and Betty claims it's not a date, but she's just going to pump him for information. And they go to Pops and they talk about information. They talk, and Trev mentions that he used to hang out with Jason all the time, and then Jason started pulling away and stopped talking to him, and then he heard rumors that Jason was like dealing drugs and trying to get money together and whatnot, probably for running away. The question is why? Well, we get a possible answer to that. So after reporting back what Trev told her, Betty and Jughead try to figure out what to do next, because they don't know anybody they can talk to who could verify anything Trev said. And Jughead suggests going to the memorial service and searching Jason's room and seeing what they can find. And so as soon as Cheryl's big moment comes and everybody kind of adjourns, they sneak upstairs, go into Jason's room, start looking around, and they don't find anything initially because it turns out Cheryl's grandmother is up there and she sees them, and they have this great moment. Tumblr pointed this out. I occasionally go into Tumblr and look at the Riverdale tag just to see what comes up. But by and large, if you're on Tumblr, don't go into the Riverdale tag. There is stupid there that does not sleep. There is nonsense shipping bullshit everywhere. Take your shipping and go away. I've mentioned this before. When that happens, you literally see Jughead hiding behind Betty, which is just such a classic Jughead thing to do. You know, just kind of hiding behind someone. That's kind of the way Jughead has done it a little bit. Jughead's usually laid back and intelligent, but you surprise him, he tends to be a little bit cowardly, so that was kind of cool. That he's more or less hiding behind Betty. Anyway, Nana Rose does something interesting. She mistakes Betty for Polly and asks her to come closer, and she says, "Oh, where is it? Oh, of course you wouldn't be wearing that. It's very smart, very smart. Smart." And she says, "What? The ring. That ring has been in the Blossom family for generations, but you keep it close to your heart, but don't let Penelope see it, or she'll just snip it right off your finger." And she says, it's devastating. They lost a son, but you lost the love of your life. And yeah, it turns out that in addition to running away, Jason and Polly apparently were engaged, which, neither set of parents appears to be happy about. So, backtracking a little bit, I finally got my wish. We did get to see Betty working on a car with her dad. Betty's mom, thankfully, for once, is not in this episode. It says she's in a woman in journalism spa and retreat thing, or she's up to something else, who knows. Anyway, Betty and her dad talk about Polly and how, Betty doesn't seem to know why the hell Polly was sent away and all that, and her dad says that Jason and Polly had a fight, and Polly tried to kill herself, and that's why they sent her off there. I'm not so sure I believe all that. Because after this revelation that Jason was engaged to Polly, Betty challenges her dad on it again. And it turns out that the Coopers and the Blossoms have had this feud going on way the hell back with both Betty and Jason's great-grandfathers. They were in business together, and apparently Jason's great-grandfather murdered Betty's great-grandfather, and there's apparently been bad blood between the Blossoms and the Coopers ever since. They were maple syrup magnates, and it's so weird with this story just saying that. It's like the intrigue of pancake topping. But whatever. So apparently there's been a big hassle. There's been a big feud between them, and it's just like, why do you even care? Because they do the same thing they do all forever. She asks, why do you even care about what happened before you were even born? Because that's what they do. They do all this out of greed and power and stuff like that. So, and Betty's just like, why can't I see Polly? And it's just like, you can't. Polly went away because she's sick, and she won't come back until she's not sick anymore. That Jason and Jason made her sick, and she's not going to come back until she's not sick anymore. Meaning that they probably mean until she's not in love with Jason anymore, because apparently, she flipped out when she found out Jason was dead. And then the last thing we see is, we see Jughead and Betty talking about this, and she doesn't know her parents anymore, and Jughead makes the thing, if they lied about that they could be lying about something else. And Polly starts thinking, maybe my dad killed Jason to protect Polly. And we seem to see something that verifies this, because we cut to the Cooper house, and Betty's dad has all the stuff that was stolen from the Keller house, all the stuff from the murder board. Do I think he wasn't at the drive-in that night. Do I think he stole it? No, actually, I don't. Because if you look at his face during that bit, he has the reaction of, oh my god, what the hell? I don't think he knew that stuff was there, which leads to one of two possibilities in my mind. One, somebody not only broke into the Keller house, they broke into the Cooper house and planted all that stuff there. Or two, it wasn't Betty's dad who stole it, but Betty's mom. Now, Betty's mom was at the drive-in that night, but only briefly. She was there long enough. Actually, no, now that I think about it, no. She found Betty and went immediately to the drive-in, she had Betty with her the whole time, so she couldn't have done it. Never mind. Sorry, my theory doesn't hold water. Because in the episode, she found Betty to talk about the gun and all that, and everything that was going on with Miss Grundy, and then she went immediately to the drive-in and got Fred, and then they went to the school and forced Miss Grundy out of town. Okay, so never mind. Betty's mom couldn't have stolen it. That was wrong. I was wrong. I was on the wrong track. Which means that unless Betty's dad actually did steal everything from the murder board, somebody else planted it there, and I'm kind of inclined to think that. It's unlikely, but right now I'm inclined to think that just because of the expression on his face. So that covers more or less everything in the episode. Now we're getting into theory territory, because I was thinking about this, and I have a theory, which ties into Betty's kind of breakdown with the hot tub a couple of episodes ago, but also kind of, if it's true, it requires two things to be true, and they're not good. We know Betty had her breakdown where she started acting like she thought she was Polly. And in order for everything to work in dialogue that people have said about Polly, it seems to require that, yes, Polly and Betty have to be two separate people. It can't, it's just the way things have been set up, Betty can't have a split personality. It doesn't work that way. Betty can't have a split personality because somebody would have noticed by now. The only other possibility requires that Betty and Polly be twins as well. Identical twins. Why? Because I'm starting to suspect, and I'm sure I'll be proved or disproved in next week's episode, because apparently Jughead and Betty are going to see Polly, according to the trailer. I'm starting to suspect that Betty isn't Betty. Betty may actually be Polly. Why? Well, with the breakdown that happened, and Betty's mom's insistence of making her perfect and pliable and everything like that, it's not just a reaction to Polly. I mean, obviously, the Coopers hate the Blossoms that much and vice versa. Both families would be freaked right the hell out if they found out that Jason was engaged to Polly and planning on eloping with her. So, if this is the case, how far would they go? I suspect, and again, I'm going to acknowledge this is not likely. This is like way low on the probability scale. But for right now, until I see more information, I'm starting to suspect that Betty may actually be Polly. And that after Jason's death and everything came out, Betty's parents went and had Polly brainwashed, for a better word, or reconditioned, or whatever. Like, all her memories of Polly blocked off somehow, of being Polly blocked off, and told her she was Betty. And remolded her in that image. And then put it back. Betty herself, the actual Betty, again, assuming that Betty and Polly are twin sisters, they then took the actual Betty, and she's the one currently locked up. Why? Just so, everything's in there. Just to make sure that, Polly never remembers and it never gets out that Jason and Polly were engaged. It might be easier to keep Polly locked up, but that just doesn't, I don't know. The way this series is going, it's really odd. Then that, if it was just Polly locked up, then that wouldn't explain the weird bit at the hot tub that Betty had. But again, that requires that both Betty and Polly actually be identical twins. Which, if they both grew up in Riverdale and everybody seeing it, would be common knowledge and nobody would say anything. And then basically they could tell the story, and by the time Polly came back, thinking she was Betty, everybody would say she was Betty, and nobody's noticed anything different. Again, is this probable? Not really. And I kind of rambled, so let me break this down. Betty is not theory, again, pure theory. Betty is not Betty. Betty is Polly, mentally reconditioned and or brainwashed to believe she's Betty. This explains when she was encountered with the same kind of stuff that was going on with the slam book or score book or whatever you want to call it with Chuck. That explains her little break and why she doesn't remember. The conditioning reasserted itself. The real Betty is locked up somewhere, out of the way, so that they could replace it, play with Betty and have her be normal. Why? Don't know yet. Don't have a motivation for that. Probably just to ensure that word of Polly and Jason's engagement didn't get out. And it would make sense, if that theory is true, that Betty would have to go, because Betty seems remarkably uninformed about the circumstances surrounding Polly's committal. She seems really uninformed about that. And Polly can't be that much older than Jason. In fact, if Cheryl's in the same class as, if she's in the same grade as Archie and company, and she and Jason were the same age, then yeah, so Polly and Betty would have to have been the same age, unless Polly's older and it was an older, younger thing, but not by much. I don't know. But yeah, right now, yeah, I am strongly suspecting that Betty isn't Betty. I'm suspecting Betty is Polly. Hopefully, next episode we'll get more on that. We're gonna get more of Josie and the Pussycats too next season, because the title is Faster Pussycats Kill Kill. Not the most original title in the world, but whatever. So, yeah, that pretty much covers it. A lot of interesting stuff happening, and a lot of questions. We've gotten some answers, but not enough, and now we just gotta wait and see what the fallout is. So, until next week, I'm Aaron Mills. Join me again for the next edition of the Riverdale Vlogs. Bye.